Good morning. It is a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I wanted to come on, make a quick video while it was fresh in my mind. This is not planned today, off the cuff. So let's see how we do. I wanted to talk a little bit about the pyramid of life mastery. I was having a conversation with a potential coach yesterday. And as we were talking, one of the things that kept coming up was this idea that when you solve your physical body, everything else gets better as a ripple effect. And we know that. But if there's anything that I've tried to do in the last few months, it's taking a lot of the things that I believe, a lot of the frameworks that might be able to help you navigate your journey and condensing them to like visual frameworks that you can understand and easily apply to your journey, which is the name of the game. And this one is no different. This is the Pyramid of Mastery, popularized by Tony Robbins. And I want to share that with you now. So if you're thinking about these 7 areas of life, they are physical body, emotions and meaning, relationships, time, work, career, mission, finances, and then celebrate and contribute. Now, before we dive into this, you might be thinking to yourself, well, hold on a second. Ryan, aren't you a body transformation coach? What grounds do you have to talk about these other areas of life? And to that, I would just say, over the last 13, 14 years now that I have been working with people, it is near impossible to not have these other areas bleed in to your transformation, right? Like it happens so many times where the lines cross. It's Venn diagrams, right? Where somebody can be making great progress towards their physical body, but what's really holding them back and what's really, maybe not bringing the level of energy and excitement to their life that they want to have is that their life conditions don't match their blueprint, not just with their physical body, but maybe in relationships. And we talk about that. But the point of this video is really just to be able to give you a framework on why physical body is so important. Also thinking through, how can I get clarity to know what my next step is? Because if we're thinking about being able to change anything, we first have to know what we need to change. And then the second thing is you have to prioritize what to change. So how do I know which one to change first? I like to think of this like a pyramid where the bottom is most important and we work up. But I also like to think of it like a wheel, because let's say that you were to take these 7 areas and create a 7-spoke wheel. And depending on how you would rate each area on a scale of 1 to 10 would determine how far out the wheel goes. And the goal is to be well-rounded, right? But the truth is a lot of people they thrive in some areas and then aren't great in others. So their wheel is kind of like malformed and that leads to pain. So what we want to try to do is identify which of these needs the most attention and then be able to go from there. Now, of course, if we're thinking about physical body, this is going to be the foundation. This is going to be the thing that allows you to make every other area better. Why? Well, I was talking to my wife yesterday and, we were just talking about what are the things we want our son to know. My son just turned 1 year old and, we have these conversations sometime and it's fun. And we were saying, one of the things that we really want him to know is one, understanding of human physiology, right? Like how the human body works. And then also an understanding of human psychology, understanding how the human brain works. And the reason I believe this is so important is because our body is our vehicle to experience life. You are not going to change that unless, unless you can download your consciousness in an AI soon or in a robot, but that's not going to happen anytime soon, right? So you need to I believe you need to understand, to have a good life, you need to understand your physical body and how it works and how to be optimally healthy. And then secondarily, we need to understand human psychology, not just for ourselves, because of course, if we can understand ourselves, we can usually, if we understand like the hardware that's going on, we can change the software. right, in our brain. And we can essentially change the way we feel if we know how human nature is. But that goes further because we can actually now identify and use that framework to be able to communicate with other people. Because think about it. What are the two things that are never going away? Or three things: your body, your brain, and also other people, right? Other people, like, people try to be hermits, but I really don't believe you can live a really full life unless you have other people in it. So with that in mind, that's a good place to start. Well, out of those three places, like where maybe do you need to start? If we think about physical body, if you're in this group, usually this is an area that needs improvement. And of course, kind of bring everything full circle, we want to make sure that whatever you're doing, it's sustainable, right? Because I made a video yesterday, and as I was making it, it's funny, I really don't plan these videos too much. They kind of just come out. But one of the things that I was mentioning that I believe strongly in is that a lot of people try to solve physical body with their rational brain. They try to solve an emotional problem with their rational brain. What I mean by that is a lot of people think that they need fitness and nutrition and just accountability to be able to get to their goal. And while that works, that's not solving the emotional problem usually, because if you think about the gap that usually we have to be able to transform our body and sustain it forever, it's usually not lack of knowledge. Now, it can be that gap and that can be solved, but usually it's an emotional challenge, right? It's something emotional that has not yet been solved. And that is harder to do because it's more nuanced, right? So when we're thinking about solving emotional challenges, it's solving stress. It's solving, and that can be solved by ripping it out of the source, by changing the way we view it, or by changing the way we cope with it. It's harder work to change emotionally. But when we do that, everything else gets better. So, and sometimes I will be honest, sometimes it is just a strategy, but it's a strategy that aligns with our emotional self. For example, if you are, maybe you do need a strategy, but that strategy that you need is focused on, okay, how can I do this while still maintaining everything else? Because what a lot of people try to do when they try to fix their wheel is they go hyper-focused on one area, all or nothing. So let's say they get fed up with their physical body. They say, all right, I'm going all in. And when they go all in, other areas suffer. And then eventually, because you're suffering everywhere, you're suffering in other areas, you're suffering in this area, progress isn't coming, your brain goes, screw this. I'm going back to what I was doing, which it makes sense why 97% of women that lose weight eventually gain it back. It's because, again, they're not aligned with their emotional selves. So if you're really looking to transform your body and sustain it forever, you have to make sure that you are aligned with your brain's natural proclivities or human nature, right? And if you haven't already, I highly suggest that you read my 12-week RN Body Breakthrough Blueprint, because that is such a good place to start. I think it's in the description, because we talk about, like, look, your brain's always trying to go towards pleasure, away from pain. Even just thinking about that, not even going into human needs psychology yet, even just those two things, your brain is always going to go towards pleasure, away from pain. What a lot of people do when they start is they do so much so quickly that they get a boost in motivation because it's novelty, it's new, I'm going to transform my life. So because of that, they are getting pleasure. But then eventually what happens is, and of course they're getting a little bit of pain, right? The pain is like, all right, I'm sacrificing for this thing. I'm taking out all the other foods I wanted to eat. I'm exercising, taking time away from my family or whatever. And while there is pleasure that comes from those activities, like, oh man, I feel so good after a workout. I feel great. But when you look at the equal, it's still more pain to pleasure when that initial spike of motivation goes away. So what happens is people start and they have a surge of motivation because they're like, this is new, this is exciting. The pain is still down here, so they keep going. Then eventually, a couple things can happen. The results slow down, the pain creeps up, pleasure goes down, or just the novelty of it goes away. And now they're in a position where the pain is higher than the pleasure. This is mirrored, so my hands are a little weird. Then what happens? Well, now you're SOL, all right? Because then you have to rely on willpower. And how long can you rely on willpower for? Well, you can do it as long as you're willing to suffer, which everyone has different varying levels of what they're willing to do, right? What I believe is the best way to do this, transform your body and sustain it forever, is instead just make sure you keep the pain underneath the pleasure. Now, of course, this is oversimplified, but think about that. If you are connecting actions that are transforming your body, more pleasure than pain, why would you stop? It's the same reason that you might eat ice cream, right? And let's say logically you don't want to eat ice cream, but oh my God, I feel like I want it. Why? Because it equals more pleasure than pain. Now, what if I were to say, hey, every time you eat ice cream, you get a massive stomach ache and you're on the toilet for 2 hours? Well, it only takes a couple of times for your brain to link up that equals more pain than pleasure. And then you stop. Does that make sense? So if we're looking to truly not rely on willpower anymore, and we're looking to be able to make this a habit that you start and never stop, you have to connect more pleasure to what you're doing up here than pain to it. And you don't do that by looking in a mirror and saying to yourself, like, okay, like, I'm not in pain. Like, I can do this. I'm great. Like, don't get me wrong. Can that help? Yeah, maybe, but it has to be natural. And the reason it has to be natural is because I understand that the majority of people in this group are not willing to spend more than 2 to 5% of their time on this new venture. And that's okay. I think a lot of coaches, what they try to do is they try to treat everybody like they're an athlete or like themselves. They coach themselves. They coach you as they would coach themselves. Not the plan. Because I have been in fitness my whole life. What I am willing to do is naturally different than what somebody maybe who's just starting out. I'm not saying that that makes an individual better or worse. It's just identifying where you're starting from, right? I have a lot of my identity attached to fitness. So again, tremendous pleasure, less pain. So I'm willing to go through more pain to maintain my identity. But somebody else who's just starting on this journey, I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that you sacrifice a lot. And this is like the antithesis of what every other coach is telling you, like 75 hard, like you just got to want it. You got to go all in and embrace the suck. And yes, you can do that. But what's going to happen? Or first of all, there's a reason that 98% of people don't finish 75 hard. But there's also a reason 97% of women that lose weight gain it back. It's because of these key pieces here, right? The pain outweighs the pleasure. So if we're thinking about making this an infinite game, starting and never stopping, the main thing you have to do is keep pain below the pleasure. If there's anything that you can get from this, it'd be that. It's funny, we started talking about the pyramid master right now. We're just talking about something completely different. Well, not completely different, but you get the idea. Hopefully that makes sense, because at the end of the day, that's what we're optimizing for, starting, never stopping. But let's get back to the pyramid of mastery for fun. So physical body, if we're looking through that lens of least amount of pain, highest amount of pleasure, what we do with our clients is we are constantly looking at what is the biggest lever. What is the thing that is going to be the least amount of effort specifically to them that's going to get them the best result? That way, pain is low, pleasure high, positive feedback loop. They can continue and stack those habits. So at the end of 12, 24, 52 weeks, they can look around and be like, this doesn't feel very hard or different. But when you look back on where you started, you're like, this is crazy, right? That's where you want to be. But you don't want it to feel hard. That is so crucially important to doing it forever. So with physical body, that's where you got to start, is like just identify like what's the first step, right? What's the first step? And I will say that in the beginning, accountability can be super impactful, right? Accountability in a group, accountability with a coach, because the habits aren't formed yet. And they do kind of pull you over that line, and they give you the guidance and the certainty, which again, going back to the 12-week RN Body Breakthrough Blueprint, is one of the human needs. So you need these 4 human needs to I'll say, to feel good and to be pulled towards things. And certainty is a main one. You have to have the certainty that the actions you're doing will work. And you're working with a coach that has done this with hundreds of other people. You know that what they tell you is like very high certainty that it will work. So you feel better about it, right? Versus trying to come up with things on your own can sometimes feel like, is this the right plan? Is it not? Like, and then you second guess, creates uncertainty, which ironically is also a human need, but that it's more like variety. So it doesn't really apply here. But anyway, I'm jumping around a lot. It's already been 16 minutes. If this was at all beneficial, feel free to leave a comment. I'm going to be honest with you, this podcast is all over the place, but hopefully it's beneficial in some capacity and maybe just gives you an additional way to look through things through a different framework. And, if there's anything that I hope you get from these podcasts, it's really just a opportunity for you to realign your focus on what matters to you, because where focus goes, energy flows, results soon follow. So when you click on this video and you watch it, you're literally putting input in your brain processes it. And it's pretty much the more material, to an extent, you can give your brain on a specific area that matters, or that really any specific area, it will start to believe it matters to you, right? And you'll think about it more. When you think about it more, input leads to thinking, thinking leads to actions, actions lead to results, right? Assuming you're doing the right actions. So that's number 1. And then number 2 is maybe just a new way to think about things. You're probably familiar with our mission, but it's to, on the surface, help our registered nurses transform their body and sustain it forever. If we go a little bit deeper, we really want to transform healthcare by transforming the front lines of healthcare, registered nurses that work with all the patients, so that they feel better, so they can give a better quality of just serving to their patients. And I think too, to go against the majority, right? There's a reason that 97% of women that lose weight gain it back. And we're trying to change that, right? Because if we can change that, we can save a lot of pain. We can, my mom, she struggled with weight loss, 35 pounds overweight for, I think it was like 7 or 8 years. It's like, because I was 15 when I helped her lose it, but it was 15, 16. Yeah. And I think it was around 7 or 8 that she was, visibly starting to become unhappy, but it's all kind of a blur. But yeah, like if we can help people off of this track of yo-yoing and spiraling and guilt, man, how cool is that, right? Like we're essentially giving freedom of mind though, right? Like we're physically free, but mentally free. And I think that that's like a really worthwhile goal to help end suffering. And I know it might sound intense when I say help end suffering, because we don't really categorize it as that, because we're not like, in a concentration camp or something. But if you think about it, it is suffering. It's not liking where you are. It's emotionally like feeling the guilt, beating yourself up. And if we could end that for like a huge amount of people, that just seems like such a good, worthwhile way to spend time, in my opinion. So that's the name of the game. If this helps you, let me know. If you want to hear a podcast about something else, feel free to drop a comment below. And I'm going to stop before I hit the 20-minute mark, because if I hit the 20-minute mark, I could go for the 30-minute mark. Hope this helps. Bye.